Well, now we're entering part two of this on the Atlantis connection with the Irish. And if you haven't seen part one yet, if you go to the very end of this one, this part I'm talking on right now, in the very top left hand corner, it'll show you part one, and we'll go back to that. I realized that I was going to have to cut out some of the last one, and what happened was I finally did this, guys. I took it and decided to separate and do this one later and run that one through the machine there and edit it, and it did do that thing where it edited 2 minutes and or well, 3 minutes and 14 seconds out of the middle, and it took it right off the end of it again. So I'm able to now go back and overlap it, and I don't have a missing part for y'all. Where we were at, though, we were talking about Hercules and Perseus, and that they're one of the most important people of Greek mythology, of course, but that they had also visited Hyperborea back in the ancient days, and it said that he had gone to Gaul and oak trees and the circle of Newgrange, or perhaps Stonehenge itself. And the Oracle of Delphi, the most sacred site in all of ancient Greece, was founded by three prophets from the sacred island of Hyperborea, who took up residence there, they say. The Greeks called these prophets Pagaeus, Agius, and Olin, which is a corruption of the three ranks of Irish Druids itself, Bagoius, Agius, and Olim. So, the founding of the Temple of Apollo and the Oracle of Delphi, and the idea it's told, and here we have another strange tale of a killing of a snake, the python, and how this relates to the Oracle of Delphi. The Greek Pherenicus described the Hyperboreans as being of the ancient blood of the Titans, and this might make a few clicks on people who are wondering who were who and how did it all lay out. The word Atlantis means literally the island of Atlas, and the Titan Atlas was the key figure in Greek mythology and is depicted as the bearer of the heavens upon his shoulders, or the world itself. According to early Greek mythology, Atlas lived on the sacred island of Hyperborea, which was also the location of the Garden of the Hesperides, a sacred garden with a tree which was bearing magical golden apples. Now, magical golden apples is seen all the way through the ancient tales of the Bible and Genesis, but also this is brought up again in the ancient tales that brought about Troy and other things. This is mentioned quite a few times in there, but if you pick apart Greek mythology, it has it at that point. This garden was also known as the Garden of Atlas, or the Orchard in the West, and we are told how the Greek hero Hercules reached Atlantis, who was among the Hyperboreans, and asked him to fetch the golden apples before tricking him and leaving with the prize. I don't have to tell you the whole story there. Might be some interesting thing, if you're not aware of it, to read into it and how it lays out, especially after you've heard what we've said here today. It might click a few things. Here we see Atlas shown as a redhead, it seems, and holding up the world upon his shoulders with the sun rising behind him in the sacred symbology with the two pillars on either side of him, and how he is protecting the whole world for these women who seem to carelessly lay about and not care, as these men, or this man, holds up the world. This is where I ended last time, so thought I'd start this time here, but I realized that's how much it cut off of it, guys. Let's just go on. Diodorus Siculus described the sacred island of Hyperborea. Plato described the sacred island of Atlantis. Aristotle described the sacred island of Ierne. All were descriptions of Ireland, though clouded by mythology, superstition, and a poor knowledge of geography. Over time, Hyperborea became Hibernia or Hibernia, the Roman name for Ireland. That also has a connection to Hebrew people and Iberia and the Iberian Peninsula, but also people that were known as Iberia in Anatolia in ancient times, and we've talked about how migrations were done. That the Roman Church overtook a campaign of vicious persecution and destruction against the Druids is a well-known historical fact. In 389 AD, a Druid college in Gaul, Bivouac, France, was destroyed by a Christian mob. This sacred Druid college had an incredible 40,000 students and offered courses in numerous disciplines, including philosophy, literature, grammar, law, medicine, astronomy, and architecture. Quite the thing here. The opinion of Aristotle is that philosophy came to the Greeks from the Gauls, which contained the Druids, and that's very striking, especially whenever people nowadays say, oh, the Greeks got everything from Egypt and blah, blah, blah. And you look at it and it's no. As I've said many, many times, the Greek gods aren't Greek gods of some little mountain in Olympus, but they are the gods of all over the place, as we've said with Dionysus and Atlas is here and all these things. They were not a people that seemed to separate and put it into their own, but they were the gods of everybody around and those that had come before. And it still was that sacred 12. And that's one way of showing you how this all had sacred connections to way back when, and 12, and we have 12 zodiacs, 12 disciples of Christ, 12, 12, 12, 12. It's just all over the place. 12 months, 12 years in school, and then you're graduated. What do they call it? Graduating. So Ireland was the source of Druidism and philosophy that predated Rome, Greece, and Egypt by millennia, he says. Every attempt was made to delete the Druids from history, in particular by the Romans, as they furiously destroyed the libraries, schools, and temples of the ancient world, including the great Library of Alexandria. One of the greatest secrets of human history is that all the world's religions and civilizations have their roots in one mothered soil. Irish Druidism, a master philosophy which predated and influenced all others, he's saying. That perhaps what he's indicating here is that the people that had gone around and relayed all of this were from the ancient Irish. Well, I'm telling you that in my studies I find this to be true also. But who makes up the ancient Irish moved around in ancient times quite a bit, for they took off to that island and lived on it, which was connected during the last ice age. But they also, the same people, and genetics is now proving this, were the Proto-Indo-Europeans also. So when you find out later that they came in, and the Tuatha De Danann that comes in, and then the Anglo-Saxons that come in, this is 3 waves of pretty much the exact same people. Now, every attempt was made to delete them in history, though. And saying that Aristotle says that philosophy came to the Greeks from the Gauls is very striking, whenever in a modern day, past that point, things that are said about the Gauls and things like that are taken to a sad point, aren't they? Well, little things like that point out that they knew each other well long ago, showing faience bead from Egypt up in Denmark, and in tombs that are there that show in Ireland Egyptian faience beads also, and the baboon head that was found there and stuff, and it shows very much connections to this whole idea of Thoth and a time whenever it was being originated. So here's a picture of an Irish Druid, and if you just look at it, it looks very much like the religious people of the Middle East and everywhere. But in their sacredness of the gods, they hold this golden choke or ring around their necks. And that's seen through the Egyptian iconography and a few others. he has a tablet that's looking here, and it looks like it's a set of pipes, but to my eyes, and the first thing, it looked like the Old Glory and the 13 stars and red and white stripes of America. But maybe that's just because the 4th of July has just come. These are the people that are known to set up stelae, to set up a stone and to engrave on the stone words about it and things. And that is something that goes from way back when, and it's said in your Bible also. There's a weird twist that's in that, and I've revealed that before a few times. In here, you see a snake in a basket right here, and the snake is coming over and drinking either water or milk, or perhaps looking on a reflecting pool. And you wouldn't think the snake in a basket, and that's got to be India, and this snake trick, and this, that, and the other. Whenever we tell you that these people got around in ancient days, they got around in ancient days quite a bit. As hard as it may be for those ignorant of Irish history to accept, the Irish were old when the Greeks were still young. For example, the Irish Tailten Games predate the Greek Olympics by over 1,000 years. I know we've got the Olympics and touted it and everything, but while the Irish Brehon laws say that they're the oldest on earth, I question that too. There's a few things I question here where he points towards Irish, but if you were to realize that the wave that came back over eventually, and still is legally now the Irish, I guess it does kind of make more sense. But I can't give credit straight out like he does. But that Tailten Games predates the Greek Olympics, and so these are the games that they have over in Scotland and things, caber tosses and all of these type of ideas, and it says it predates it. And we know the Olympics is one of the heritage of Caucasians and of this planet itself, where we have sporting games and things that go along with that. Some are so old almost no one cares anymore, and we've adopted all kinds of new games into it. For when it started, of course, there wasn't cycling and all these other things that were part of it. There weren't that many events, but we've turned it into a great event and encompassed the whole world in the idea. The whole world is to test each other in the games, and that brings about better and more athletes and so on. And just one aspect of human civilization is pumped on and on and on every 4 years for these people trying to strive towards greatness that was started a long time ago off some simple, silly little game, right? Now, while the Irish Brehon laws are the oldest on earth, he says, and we have the different versions of the earliest laws, and a lot of people try to say that the Assyrians had this ones and so on that they had, but there was a lot of laws predating that, and then before the time that they were even written down. But I'm guessing you have to correlate the point that they get written down, and that becomes strict from that point on. Well, it was strict before, but we wrote it down. A lot of these things in life seem to come about before writing. And that leads a weird mystery and leads another layer of mist to the whole thing, because, I don't know, you're taught to believe that we would have come up with writing about the time we went bing and the light went on. No, the light went on long ago. Writing came later. In fact, the order of things that came in order really seemed to be a little bit odd if you look at it in truth. The Irish ancient Gaelic language is the missing mother tongue that scholars have sought for centuries, or it is one of the closest to Proto-Indo-European or the ancient Aryan languages. Sanskrit's not far off either, by the way. In fact, they're two of the closest ones. To account for this missing root language, academics have invented a hypothetical mother tongue called Proto-Indo-European language, which used to be called Aryan. But due to the things and the media and everything after World War II, that can't be looked upon, nor that symbol of the swastika, but it correlates to things that go way, 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 way back before this, and it shouldn't be something that's undeified so much. Old Irish is this language, he's telling you, a forgotten ancient tongue with a remarkable similarity to the world's oldest languages, including Hebrew, Arabic, and Sanskrit. And there are direct connections. People that are directly into linguistics have made these connections where they have the same words, like pater, which is your father, and mater, which is mother. And it goes through this whole ones and everything, and pater, and well, you don't think that's in the Bible, but there's St. Peter and the paternal way of looking things, and Dios Pater was Jupiter. Now in your Bible, that's Japheth or Iapetus. Oh, ding, knock, knock. An ancient language that does exist is much more practical explanation for a missing mother tongue than a language that doesn't. That's a pretty good statement. It's the reason I separated it there. I'm going to say it one more time. Them going back in these languages, and if you'll look at the tree roots and how it comes back at the point that it goes 2 levels past the point that we know of now, they could all speak to each other. From Aryans of India to China and the Tarim Basin mummies all the way to Ireland. And an ancient language that does exist is a much more practical explanation for a missing mother tongue than a language that doesn't. People try to discount it, but well, it had to come from this, and it's amazing how Ireland and Sanskrit have these same roots. And what are the people that connected to those two? Oh, snap. Knock, knock. Ding. The Egyptians were old when the Greeks were young, but the Irish Druids were older still. Ireland's Stone Age constructions are the most spectacular on Earth. Well, there's a weird statement there because the pyramids have got to be like the most incredible thing on Earth that most people think of, right? Well, sometimes colossal is real important, guys, right? Sometimes the size of something, the world's tallest building and this, that, and the other is the most important. The largest ship, the Titanic, which came out of Irish shipyards, and a heritage that goes back to the origin of ships. It doesn't just go back a few hundred years, it goes back to ancient times. We've recently talked about a boat dock they found 35 foot below the water that was there at 8,000 years ago, and they were creating wooden boats and all this stuff. And you say, well, 8,000, 6,000 BC, well, now we're predating even the Badarian culture coming on and so on, and they already have it going on, and it isn't reed boats and things like people were thinking even at that point. And how far does it go back? Well, there are cave paintings at 16,000, 22,000 BC that have boats on them. But people always want to fight with that idea, and then they come out and, well, how the hell did the Aborigines get to Australia? And then they get real red in their face, and then they, and that leaves a gap of 30,000 years, people. I don't know if you understand how long 30,000 years is. I can't bring myself to fathom it quite often. It's hard for me to ingrain 10,000 years and look at Göbekli Tepe and things that spread across and have a good idea through the whole thing. Then to turn around and lump on and say, well, it looks like there's 40,000 long. What the hell? Ireland is Atlantis. No other place on Earth has the ancient history, mythology, or culture of Ireland. Yeah, it's a little unique, but yet it is a variation on a theme of that similar thing that we've talked about so many times. We know that the Stone Age Irish had boats capable of carrying 10-ton boulders. Yeah, how do we know that? Well, we know that they carried the ancient stones of Stonehenge across waters and everything. That's how Merlin did the magic that floated the stones. What did he float? How did he float them and make them lighter than wood and all this things? He floated them. They floated. How could you float it? They attach it to wood like a boat. It makes things buoyant. It's ignorant to think that the wandering Irish didn't use these boats to explore the wider world. Globally, Stone Age man was more mobile than they have been given credit for, and the Irish were certainly a lot more advanced than most realize. And I've shown you this in a lot of my videos, and I behoove you to go back through and look at a lot of these, and no, they're not in order. But hit on some key words or just look down through them and find key words. But I warn you now, you'll find a one that you think is only about this, and whenever you get into it, I go all off in left field in every single one of these videos and try to make attachments. So later when something like this comes along and you read it, you'll have a lot to end up basing your yes-no kind of concept of on. And right here was the presentation of that company, and he pretty much goes over what we've been talking about, but he shows a couple of video clips and things like that, and it goes on for quite some time. So but look this up here and go through it. It's a 3-hour video, and I'll tell you now, I don't agree with 100% of what he says, but the gist is there. Well, how strong is that? Well, we've talked about how much truth the Bible has in it as comparison towards reality. This holds more percentage-wise. Yes. But that's not a bearing of anything either. For the Bible, it's just been twisted a little bit. And it's no longer exactly the book that it started out to supposedly be. But that's for a whole other series of videos. The current mainstream version of history is a house of cards that is about to come crashing down. Earlier this year, it was proven that people sailed to Australia on rafts 65,000 years ago, shattering the previous illusion that Australia had only been occupied for a few centuries. Many more illusions are about to be shattered. Well, long ago, we realized that, the people got to Australia. It was one way in school that I would just make fools of these people, and they go, oh, they didn't know anything, and the world was flat, and da-da-da. And I go, how do you think the people of Australia ever got there? It changes the whole conversation. Like, hiya, and there it is. Like Samurai Night Taylor in SNL old days, and he cuts a whole suit in one shot. The brutal truth is that Ireland's ancient history has been written by her enemies. And indeed, history is written by the enemies. We know that. We know that statement and the way that it goes, right? For the past part of 1,000 years, Ireland's culture has been desecrated. Her books burned. Her people that are doing videos about her resetting somehow and actually resetting to a totally other video. Did you see that happen right in front of you? I touched nothing. I was starting to read. Oh, man. Is this the one? See if we can just get back to it. Nope, that's not it. That's the other one with Atlantis, Ireland, which I'm about to do after this one here. So where is it? Well, let me see if I can go back to here this way and see if it'll pull it up here. Any chance? Oh, it's having trouble. That was the thing there, huh? You're like, duh. So people, this is what I usually cut out if anything like this happens during a video. And, but the sad thing is the editor that I'm using here cuts out the 2 minutes that I wanted to get this back loaded up. But then for some stupid reason, it cuts 2 extra minutes exactly off the end too. So my little salutation on about 20 of my videos have parts where I was just about to get to the point where I was going to tell you something, and lo and behold, we didn't get to hear that, and it chops it off, and I don't like that. So, seriously, now it's not even loading up to the one that it was before, and I find that just sad. Let me see if I can search it on their site now then. Let's try Irish-Atlantis. Yeah, so this is the stuff I usually cut out. But whenever I cut it out, half the time it cuts out off the other one. And so they've got a few other ones about this and making connections, but that's not it. Emerald Enigma is not the name of the one, and this is July 4th. Look, now it can't even refresh. The hell? Oh, man. You talk about stress. All I'm just trying to do is simply tell you some simple story, read it straightforward, and it keeps reloading like it's, oh, I've got to put this ad up in your face. Lo and behold, there we are. Ancient Egyptian and Greek clues. Bear with me as we zoom down. Yeah, I feel terrible whenever I get through all of this and then something like this happens. Just disgusting, really. And there's no need for it. There was no need for it all of a sudden to go, oh, I can't think straight. There was no need for it to pull up anything. The whole page was already pulled up. I already looked through it, read it, everything. Why would it possibly need to have that happen? And it didn't. By the way, here's that Atlantis, Ireland video that guy does. And no, we're not going to look at it. For it goes on for 3 hours. And if you want to let me do that and dissect it, this is going to be a 20-parter. It wouldn't go that long, but so for the best part of 1,000 years, Ireland's culture has been desecrated, her books burned, and her ancient language driven to the point of extinction. Some of the most deplorable acts of brutality and genocide ever committed on Earth were committed on the Emerald Isle by the very people who wrote Ireland's histories. So it's time to set the record straight. And oh no, that means there's a war coming. No. Unless you want to talk about a war of words. It doesn't have to get to any points like that, people. Everybody always hears that and they think of challenging words. No, this is just time to set the record straight on how things went down. For the last part of the Irish were choked out during the slave trade that helped make up America and the Irish potato famine and all these things that happened. For the first slaves of the Americas were the Irish. And you can look back and see how they were treated. Causeway of the Giants, an incredible place. Beautiful picture. The groundbreaking Atlantis Ireland theory has put forward by Keystone University, a new and highly ambitious organization based in Dublin, Ireland. Keystone's mission is to build the world's best university, a center of excellence that pushes the human race forward. A keystone is an ancient symbol for wisdom. And then you can see that in esoteric circles, but a keystone is also that funny odd-shaped stone that is the pinnacle of an arch. The highest point of an arch that holds the whole thing together. A spokesman for Keystone University said, to put forward any theory on Atlantis is to open yourself up to a lot of ridicule. People can attack our findings, our organization, or the very legend of Atlantis itself, But in the end, we have over 1,000 pieces of evidence that prove beyond all reasonable doubt that the ancient Ireland is the legendary lost island and the mother culture of human civilization and the Proto-Europeans, he's saying. We don't ask anyone to believe a word we say. We only examine the evidence and think for themselves. 16 years ago, brave Swedish scientists claimed that Ireland was Atlantis. Hopefully we don't have to wait this long for the mainstream to catch up, but if we do, so be it. The Irish have waited over 1,000 years to clear their name, and another decade won't make any difference. For more information, go to this site. It's keystone.ie. There's a brand new book that's out, so on. He has a list of references that he kicks up there, but whenever I originally did this, I usually look through here and try to get some ideas on things to do. Of course, I don't like doing things in a modern day and about Trump and this, that, and the other, but sometimes I feel compelled. I've just got to speak. 35 reality shows that are totally fake. Yep, there's a lot of people that are swamped up into them like, oh, yeah, yeah, it's totally fake and has been for a long time. So this is what a man from the Tomb of the Sunken Skulls looked like, and you take a look at him, and I tell you that even with the beard, that looks like my Uncle Donnie. Yeah. So, ancient Ireland and their attachments to Egypt and around the world is through voicings. And though I don't agree with everything he says, and let me tell you, I'd love to because I'm Irish, I think that in my showings, I show that works out a little bit different, but still ends up the same way as he's saying, if you follow me. Like, share, and subscribe, guys, and enjoy. And we're going to get on to another one. And in fact, the next one is that next one that I kept pulling up that I didn't want to see. And we're going to go through that and see what interesting thoughts it has to add to the puzzle. Peace.